This episode is sponsored by Turn Gymnastics Apparel, the brand dedicated solely to the sport of men's gymnastics. Choose Turn this season to outfit your team with industry-leading design concepts and elevated options for elite performance. Get the design process started today. Visit turn-gymnastics.com to discover the latest possibilities. Turn. Never done perfecting. Thank you, Turn, for supporting the Sam Oldham podcast. Supporting Turn helps us bring you new content every single week from the world of gymnastics. I hope you enjoy this episode of the Sam Oldham podcast. In this episode of the Sam Oldham podcast, I'm joined by Frederick Richard. In 2024 at the Paris Olympic Games, he was part of the USA men's gymnastics team that won a bronze medal. It was the first team medal since 2008 in Beijing. Since then, and last summer, Frederick has gone on to collaborate with some of the biggest superstars in the world, and he's part of the new age of gymnastics, trying to revolutionize the sport. He's just released a brand new uniform with Turn and competed at the Winter Cup, and this is his story. Frederick, thanks for joining us again, my friend. I'm just going to start off straight off the bat. Olympic medalist, how does that sound, and has it sunk in? Following on from our conversation that we had prior to the Olympic Games last year, after that conversation, mate, honestly, we've now done over 100 episodes of this podcast and spoken to some of the biggest names in the sport, and both me and Sam looked at each other and went, you can't really invest in people, but if I was going to invest in someone, it's that guy. He's got something a little bit special, and I was really excited about watching you in Paris. So congratulations, mate. And just tell me, how does that sound, Olympic medalist?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for having me, number one. That intro is amazing. I mean, you mastered the intros. That's hyping me up right there. How does it feel to be an Olympian? I think it definitely has sunk it in. It's been over 6 months now. I think you feel older. It's weird. It's like you've finally experienced every part of the sport, every level to it. That's exciting to know that and see that. But overall, I'm thankful, and I'm just thankful for it. You know what I mean? Like, everything has worked out for you to accomplish what every kid dreams of. Now I'm here. So many other things have happened, meeting celebrities, doing these collaborations, building things that don't exist yet, like the uniform designing. And it just feels like kind of just this new age, this new era. Hopefully I'm leading it, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, so really exciting. For me, I feel like it's a very exciting time for men's gymnastics. I think Paris gymnastics had a real moment, right? Like, from Simone Biles and the Netflix documentary going into the games, and then the superstars that were turning up to watch gymnastics, it was so huge for the sport. But for then, you guys to win that medal with LA coming up in 4 years' time, and then also with Steven having that viral moment that just went crazy all over the world, I was like, this is it. If there's ever a time that maybe we could start to shift the narrative around the sport and bring the eyeballs in, it's now, with 4 years to go till an Olympic Games in LA, because everyone's going to want to be at that Olympic Games because it's going to be bigger and better than anything before, right? That's America, everything's supersized. So it's so exciting, mate, and you really are on leading that charge. You spoke a little bit about the levels to the game. Did it feel like there was a shift in levels when you competed at the Olympics in comparison to the World Championships the year before where you made your debut?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is actually an interesting question because it's something that I kind of was struggling with during the Olympics or right before the Olympics. It's kind of this idea that you dream of this moment your whole life. You want it to seem bigger. You don't want to miss out on the Olympics feeling like the Olympics, like the biggest thing, the most high pressure situation. It's like you want that because then when you look back on it, it's going to be like, this was the hardest, most high pressure, the biggest event of my life. But also I knew, and we all knew on the team, that the only way for us to perform to our highest level was to treat it like another competition. And so, there's this struggle of whether I trick my mind into thinking it's bigger or is really big, or trick my mind into thinking it's smaller and simple. And I ended up deciding, and we all decided, we're going to treat it like another competition. And it was definitely the right play for us to be comfortable. But then after, when you see the effect on the world and what everybody else is saying, that's when it seems like the biggest thing, because millions of people saw it, millions of people talking about it. So that kind of answered my question of, in the moment, you don't treat it like it's the biggest thing. But afterwards, once you get the medal, once you do this, have the success, then you look back and it looks like the biggest thing.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, mate. It's almost like you've got two people on your shoulders, right? And they're arguing with each other. And I think you're right in that you have to try and just play everything down as much as you can in that moment. But the reality is nothing's probably going to prepare you for an Olympic final, right? Like, you can do all the control competitions, you can do a world championships, but that Olympic energy, it's just a little bit different. But you guys handled it really well. What was the switch, and was there a switch in mindset from qualification to team final? Because obviously the qualification didn't quite go your guys' way as a team. And I was thinking, oh, wow, well, you know, maybe the British guys have got a chance here because they did pretty well. And going into the competition, I was certainly putting you guys as a favorite, you know, personally. You know, I want the British guys to beat you, but I'm thinking logically, I think their team is maybe a little bit stronger as a team. They're more of a well-rounded group rather than just very good individuals. Then the qualification doesn't go so great. What happened in between those days from the qualifying, Frederick, until the team final?
Yeah, and so the first thing is, again, just what we talked about is we went into the qualifications trying to feeling like it's the biggest thing and trying to get this experience. Like, wow, we're finally at the Olympic Games. Like, this is it. We hop on the event. This is the first event of the Olympics, first routine I'm doing under pressure. Now it all matters. Now millions of people are watching. And we were kind of telling ourselves this. And so we struggled a lot. Then after it, when we get the experience, you know, throughout the competition, we realized like we've basically adjusted to the atmosphere. We said, okay, now it's been a couple of routines. I realize I'm holding back. I realize putting all this pressure for no reason. We're doing all this and that. And that's when we rewired and figured out kind of our footing on how to handle the biggest moment. And that's the big switch that happened. And we knew after day one, and I said this in an interview, like, I have no doubt about day two, because we got everything out. We experienced everything, and then we knew how to handle it. And the second thing is it humbled us. We got fifth, and it gave nobody any expectation of us to put pressure on us. Now everybody thinks we're out of it. Now no one's looking at us and saying, you have to win. And so it's kind of like all we saw is opportunity, not like fear of missing out. And so we just took advantage of that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, mate. Like, in that situation, you could have some mistakes, you qualify in fifth, and all of a sudden those cameras switch to somebody else, right? So the pressure isn't on you, and then you can come out and essentially you're playing to win instead of playing not to lose, which is always a great position to be in. Was there a difference, Fred? You know, would you say the overall mindset of the team going into the team final was slightly differently to how you felt as an individual when you were competing for yourself? Or did you kind of carry that mindset through to your individual competition that you competed in?
Yeah, I'd say the mindset's definitely a little different. And I think we do a great job of using this team mindset to our advantage. We all come from the NCAA where we compete on teams. And what it felt like in that team final was, I'm not the only one doing this routine. 5 of us are doing this routine at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. It's like, it doesn't matter if I'm going on the equipment or somebody else is going on the equipment. We're all doing the routine at the same time. And that mindset or effect takes off pressure from you because it doesn't feel like it's just you. And it just kind of made everything flow. It's like you're serving something bigger than yourself. And I think all of us have loved that environment, have thrived in it in NCAA. We've all had huge successes in it. And when it came to the Olympics and it was time to do that again, we all excelled at it. Going into the all-around final, I mean, you don't have that serving something bigger than yourself. I really wanted the success in the all-around. I knew it was possible. But I also didn't realize how much fatigue you gain. This is the other thing you can't train. When the brain of the firing of when you get the medal or when you're pushing, giving everything on every routine in the team final, it's a lot on your body and your mind, way more than any normal workout. And it does have an effect 2 days later. So that was hard to adjust to, and feeling more tired and feeling all these things and trying to lock in. And it's definitely something I'm looking to figure out and master leading to the bigger competitions, the next Olympics in LA.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing for people to maybe hear from you, Frederick. Like, when you compete in a team final like that, that is so emotionally charged, it physically drains you the next few days. And, you know, as an athlete that wants to have that individual success, one thing you have to learn to do is, right, I'm going to be competing essentially for 2 weeks. So how do I make sure that I'm as fresh, as motivated, as driven, and as on in my first routine to my last routine? And how do I sustain that energy? And, you know, that's just an experience thing, right? I'm sure in the next Olympic Games, you know, if you make it there, and hopefully you will, and I'm sure that you will, you'll be able to use that experience to carry you forward. Were there any moments, Frederick, from the team final, any routines, maybe a routine personally that stood out for you? And can you take us through that and like what that felt like doing that routine? And then maybe a moment or a routine of somebody else that you look back now and you just really remember that standing out to you.
Yeah. I guess my routine, my definitely standout routine was high bar. You know, this was the event I knew training up to the Olympics that the team would need for sure. And it's an event that would be a decider of whether we're getting a medal or not. It's very easy for teams to come off the event, to score very low. We needed to, and we've in the past not been as strong on high bar, so I needed to capitalize on that. I also believed I could get the high bar medal in the event final, so I was training for that too. And, you know, you salute your hand, you know you've done so many routines. I can't even emphasize how many routines, how many hard routines. When I say hard routines, it's when you're on your second routine and it's the last event of your practice and you're super tired and the coaches are saying, you know, you can't follow this routine. Like, this is the exact test that you're going to have in a couple of months. But you fast forward and you're in that moment at the Olympics and you realize, wow, I prepared for this like so well. I don't really have to do anything. Like, I just have to salute my hand and go, and my body's going to do the work. And that's what it felt like in the biggest high pressure scenario ever. It's the Olympics, this event where you have the releases and you can miss the bar. I had zero doubt and I didn't even use my mind. I really just said, okay, I've done the work. I'm going to let my body do it. And everything just flowed right. Everything felt great. And going for the dismount, I said, I have to stick this. I have to stick this like for the other four guys to keep this momentum building. You know, I have to stick this to solidify this event and kind of like push us forward throughout this meet. So I gave everything to it, and you put it down and you realize you stuck it. Everything worked out exactly how you wanted. The crowd's going crazy now, and you're just like, this is exactly what I trained for. This is what I live for. That was my Olympic moment. So, yeah.
Do you think, Frederick, you've ever been in, you know, that pressured moment on the biggest stage of all, that high bar routine, and you're talking about there consciously thinking about sticking the dismount? That means that you've got to be so fit to get to the end of your routine and consciously be thinking about, how do I put this dismount in the right place to stick the landing in that situation? You know, have you been in that physical and mental shape many times before in your career? Or do you feel like that's so far in my gymnastics journey, that was the peak of my gymnastics?
Yeah, I think, which is interesting, I think I've been in that shape many times before. I think this was an example of my physical shape. I wouldn't even say it was at its peak. It was in the range of its peak. You know, I trained so hard. I would have done that routine and felt like in any situation. Like, I didn't care. I could handle all those skills and I was going to do it no matter how tired I was, but I was going to go for the stick and I was going to make it happen. It almost felt like willpower over physical, even though my physical was ready. But world championship before that, I was in amazing shape. Even when you're younger, you know, when you're younger and you're training for the regional competition or small competitions, but your coach had you do lots of routines, it all is the same. And that's the cool thing about it. You know, your 10-year-old self is at his peak here. He's saying he's the best shape he's ever been in. And I was saying the same thing there. But I knew how to use that moment because I've done it before. You know, in the NCAAs, I've had to do this before and successfully done it. I think those experiences are what made me ready for this one.
You know, when you talk about, like, a lot of athletes will say, I've done so many routines, I'm so well prepared. I think for someone that might be listening to this conversation that is maybe wanting to get to the place that you're at right now, right? So competing at the very highest level, challenging for medals on a world stage. What does that actually look like Frederick, like in terms of numbers? So if you're preparing for, let's say, a World Championships and Olympic Games, and that preparation phase is, I don't know, let's say it's 12 weeks or 6 months, like how many routines of the standard that you're competing at a Worlds or Olympic Games, how many of those routines are you capable of doing in a week or in a month? Because I think a lot of the time, like gymnasts that come on a podcast or have a long form conversation will talk about the numbers, but never get quite that specific. And I think that'd be super helpful. Like, do you know the numbers of high bar routines you did prior to Paris?
So you go with your coach and you say, we're going to create this training plan. And I'll tell you what the peak of the training plan gets to, because it's a process of building up. You're building up like this. And I decided I wanted to get into 2-on-6 shape. So in a day, you handle 2 routines on each event. And that would be 3 times in a week. So Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, every other day to be able to handle 2-on-6, which is twice the amount of regular competition, 3 days in a row. And that would be simulating the Olympics load or doubling the Olympics load. So that's the shape that we progressed into. And that's the shape that we got to. And it's not very easy at the highest difficulty routines. It can be dangerous. It can be really hard because on this ramp-up process, you're struggling. You know, it's not like you're fresh every day. But that's the shape that I got into. And a lot of people advise against it of, hey, that's could be a little too much, especially if all it takes is one injury for you to be out of it for this Olympics, you know. So how do you get to this safely? But that's what I committed to, and that's what we made it to. It was not an easy process, but it puts a lot of routines in for that week.
And what about the moment, mate, that stood out, maybe somebody else in the team final, whether it was someone from another country or one of your teammates? Was there a routine or a moment that when you look back now, you're like, wow? Because I remember in the team final in London, Christian Thomas did his double pike Yachenko and stuck it. And that was like, that we all just were like, okay, something's happening. There's some momentum. Was there a moment like that for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, of course, everybody looks at Steven and says that finishing pommel war set. That's one of them. And I think there's a lot, so I'll say a couple, but that is huge. I mean, pressure's on him. He's got to finish off for the team. But if you know Steven, and I know Steven, his mindset wasn't, you know, what if I mess up or like all the pressure right on me. His mindset is like, I'm going to go there, do my best, have fun up there. And that's what we're telling him to do. And that was the vibe that we create before we go in any situation. And he did crazy amazing. We're all squeezing each other. The amount of emotions going through your head on every skill, but he killed it. So that's one of them. The next I would say is vault. I would say we had 3 sticks. We had 2 sticks and Asher's Rise. And Paul starting off with a stick. It's about building momentum in these competitions. You know, Paul he starts off with a stick, momentum shift. Next, Brody goes, he starts off he gets another stick. Now that momentum like triples, it doesn't even double. Because I know Asher's going there like, I'm not worried about falling anymore. This is like, let's keep this going. And there's an amazing Rise Guang, one of the hardest vaults in the world. And that's kind of the momentum shift. And the whole arena's chanting USA at an international. You know, this isn't in the U.S., this is in Paris, but the whole arena is chanting USA like they're the team we want to win. So I think that was a big moment of like, wow, we're in another country. Everybody's rooting for us. The momentum is here. Let's do this today.
And then, you know, you have that success as a team and as an individual in Paris. It seemed to me like you were preparing prior to Paris to be that successful so that if you could then capitalize on that and build on everything, that platform and that springboard. And, you know, you see Steven going on to do Dancing with the Stars in the US and making the most of that situation that he's in. And you've definitely been doing the same. Did you have a plan prior to the games, Frederick? And also, how important do you think that is for an athlete? Number one, it obviously shows an enormous amount of confidence in your own ability, right? But you don't want to ever be in that situation and to have won an Olympic medal and then almost not be ready to make the most of that, because you know, like, sports is incredibly ruthless, right? And I hope that you have multiple chances to go, but that might not happen. So you have to make the most of it if you're in that situation.
Exactly. And I definitely had a plan, and I had a plan many, many months before. But to put this in perspective, you don't get a plan many months before by starting many months before. I started 2 years before, working and building up the team to be behind me to make this stuff happen, and working on building a plan for the Olympics. And I'm working now every day extremely hard for a plan to LA 2028, 4 years out, of how much can we build, how much can we do, that way it all can be capitalized. I think the advice to anybody is have a plan. What's the saying? It's like either plan, was it?
Fail to plan.
Like,
is it fail to plan to it's something like that,
plan,
right?
Yeah. Fail to plan or plan to fail.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what. But it's the biggest lesson I have. It's like you cannot get anywhere without a plan. You know, to get to the Olympics in gymnastics, you create a training plan, you pick the right routines, you pick the ramp-up process, and you get there. But I said, this isn't the only way I'm trying to capitalize. Now I need to plan on the business side or the personal brand side. What is my future? I think everybody should be thinking about this from whatever age you are now. It doesn't matter if you're 10 years old, you're 15, 20, you should be thinking about it now, because I think my biggest fear in gymnastics was probably two things. One is you become the best in the world, you have all the success, and you walk down the street and no one knows your name, you know? And that's a very real thing in gymnastics. You know, the best football player in the world isn't worrying about that. Best basketball player in the world is. But in gymnastics, the average person on the street doesn't know who you are. And that's been my biggest fear, is like, I give everything to the sport, give my whole life to it, and not get recognized for it. That's what led me to think on this business side. And we're still not there. Yes, I'm a lot more known, a lot more successful, but for LA, again, we're aiming even bigger. Then the next thing my other biggest fear was get to the highest level, you're an Olympian, and you still have to worry about paying your bills or barely affording your training and all of that combined. You know, a lot of guys, the 10th best guy in the country is making not enough to afford everything. And that's a problem in our sport. You know, that's a situation I think the 10th best guy should not be in. The number one guy should definitely not be in. And it still exists in our sport, where even if you're good for 2 or 3 years, you start going like this and it doesn't set you up for life. Mm. And so these are the things I thought about from the youngest age. I'm talking 16 years old, COVID, I'm just in my house, so much time to think. And I started thinking about my future, thinking about, you know, I don't want to be in this situation when I'm older. How am I going to make this change? What can I do? And that's kind of where everything started building, and finding the right people to advise, finding people to learn from, kind of just going out of my way to do whatever it takes to solve this issue.
What started to influence that way of thinking, mate? Because 15 or 16 to be thinking that way is somewhat unusual, right? So were there other people that influenced that thinking? Did that purely come from yourself? Were you reading books or listening to other people and other athletes speak?
Mm-hmm. So I think I definitely, in that period of COVID, got into kind of that self-help, self-discovery phase, number one, of all the self-help books, you know, 4-Hour Work Week, Atomic Habits, and all of these books on basically ways to optimize your life. And, you know, we're in the era of social media where you can see what everybody else is doing in the world, right? So in COVID, while I'm living this way, you can see how other people are living. I think it was actually the lack of talking to people directly around me and seeing people much further away from me that allowed me to say, this is possible. I don't have to live like everybody else around me. People are living in a whole other level, you know, 5 times bigger. Is it possible for me to get this level? You know, I'm talking about the entrepreneurs in all different business industries. I'm talking about just successful people in sports, in basically everything they did and how they built empires. The Martha Stewarts, obviously the top athletes, the Muhammad Ali's, basically everything. And when I was disconnected, when I was not in COVID and I was training and you're in school and kind of just surrounded by everybody who's living simpler than these people, because that's just how it is and that's just how the majority of people live. You kind of just say to yourself, I'm going to be like everybody else. I need to fit in like everybody else, because every day you're with everybody telling you to fit in. Then I had that period to think and see that, and that's what allowed me to decide, try to reach bigger. Can't lose. It's a fun journey. Seems fun to me, and it's about something I love to do. So yeah.
Since the games, what have been the biggest changes in terms of your life? Has anything changed? Obviously now you're way more recognized, right? Maybe with that comes more responsibility, a bit more pressure. There's more expectation. And has your team changed in any way? That team you talk about, the people around you, is it still the same team that you had when you were 16, or has it changed since the games?
Yeah. So I guess first question, has a lot changed? I would say I've changed in maturity or experiences. I mean, you get a big experience like that, you only grow from it and learn from it. Other than that, nothing has changed in the fact that everything else is outside of me. So I've changed a little bit, but you're not like levitating, feeling like an Olympian all day. I'm Frederick Richard before the Olympian. You're yourself, at the end of the day. And that's the thing that, you hear about, this person's on a high and then comes down after winning Olympic medals. I guess that's usually from expecting that you're going to change. But I love the situation I'm in, and I've loved it from the beginning. You're in sports. You can never stop training 6 hours a day if you want to be the best. So that's going to be exactly the same. The struggles all stay the same. The things around me have changed. People do recognize me. The plans changed, planning bigger things, meeting bigger people. And then my team has changed. And to go back to the team, I started with one person on my team first, which would be my agent. And he's very experienced in the industry and older. Then I found a manager. He was more experienced in the social media side of things. He taught me about the algorithms and how to optimize and how to hook people and build storylines and do content to the highest level. Then when I got to college, I had hired 2 videographers to help me shoot the content because I still have to focus on training. By the Olympics, I had an editor also. Then after the Olympics, I had a designer also. Now for designing these uniform, things I'm passionate about. And then another editor and another videographer. And so the team just expanded. The core people started there. Now I have a team of about 8 people. And it's crazy to think about, like, while I sleep, 8 people are working to build this goal that I have or this future. And that's the power of building a team. It's like, it's not just on you anymore. I mean, you're only as strong as your team, because now I have 16 hands, 8 people, 2 hands each, working on this journey, on the Frederick Flips brand. I mean, that's huge. And if the team gets to 50 people, you're going to be moving like this. And it's having the goals, going after them, setting the right North Star of what everybody knows they're going after, and everybody has the same clarity of what they're trying to achieve. And it's leading.
Do you still have people? So what sometimes happens, Frederick, right? You have all this success, and all of a sudden everybody around you, all they ever tell you is the good stuff. And they stop maybe telling you the truth. Do you still have people around you that keep you quite level-headed and say, hey, Frederick, maybe you shouldn't do that, or maybe you need to be in the gym 6 hours a day, you're missing practice here and there to be with sponsors? Are you conscious that there are certain things I need to put in place to make sure that in 4 years' time, I've still done all the work and all of the training, and I've not fallen into the traps that some athletes make once they start to get a bit of success? It sounds to me like, I imagine your answer is going to be yes, like I'm already preparing for that. Is that something that you think about?
It's definitely something you think about and I think about, but the answer to it is, again, it is your team. It's the right people on your team. My team has a good amount of people older than me, more experienced than me, who humble me every single day. They do. And also my parents, they've grown up with me. They're not my yes men. They don't care. They'll be straight with me. And it's having the right people to limit you. Your team's not supposed to be built with everybody who agrees with you. The team is supposed to have the perfect balance of everybody agrees on that North Star, but there are some disagreements on the way to get there. And everybody tells you what they believe, and then I have to make the decision to pick the best things at the end of the day. But I get every angle, and I listen to every angle, and that's my role as the person that's going to actually do these things is you have to take good advice, or you have to take all advice and then filter it and make the best decision. I mean, we do that in gymnastics. I have 3 coaches, and it's taking the best advice, filtering it. And you see this with athletes growing up. Your coach will tell you one thing, you can ignore it, then you can end up in a worse spot. So it's always, at the end of the day, it's on the athlete, it's on me to take all this information. But I will say I get it from all different angles, which then it's up to me.
What's the difference, Frederick, between an agent and a manager?
Yeah, so agent, I would say simply, is the agent's getting the deals. He's focusing on getting the revenue through sponsors. And yeah, he's doing a couple other things, but that's the main focus. You know, how are we going to work with brands to achieve your goals? Then my manager is saying, how are we going to handle all the operations? How are we going to work with the team to achieve these goals? Like talking with every member of the team, how are we going to achieve these goals, and create other revenue streams or things in the future?
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's useful for people to know, because maybe if you're a young athlete that's never been approached by a sports agency, you might not know the difference between what's a manager and what's an agent, and what are their roles and what do they do, and how do those people in your support team make your life easier, Frederick?
That's a great question. I mean, again, when you're at this level, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of things coming in. They basically create a wall to filter in that noise and then give me what they think is the most valuable things. And then I filter it. And then I guess this is another topic, well, same thing, but for people wondering about agents, what a great agent is versus a good agent, I think the difference that I would tell people, and same with manager, is one person is trying to capitalize off where you are now, and the other that would be the good agent. The great agent is trying to get you to where you're trying to go. You know, it's easy to get signed by an agency and they focus on, you're at blank followers now and you have 1 Olympic medal now. This is your resume. Let's get you deals. And the other person says, we need you to be here in 5 years. You may not get the most profits this year that you could have if you just capitalize, but we're going to set you up. That way you go this direction and take these strategic deals and these strategic plans that eventually is going to get you to the outcome. And that's the big difference.
Yeah, that's amazing advice, that is, mate, because, you know, I've had experience of being with sports agents and managers, and they're very good at talking, right? Because that's their job. And so you have to learn very quickly, especially in elite level sport, to feel, okay, I almost have to translate what this person's saying. He's saying one thing, but what is he really saying? And you need experience to understand that, right? Like sometimes you have to make mistakes and then you learn and then you start to figure people out and the inner workings of that industry. But that's brilliant advice for young athletes that maybe went to Paris and had success, right? I know a few British athletes that, you know, we went and filmed a documentary recently with Harry Hepworth and Luke Whitehouse in Leeds Gymnastics Club, and they were saying, oh, we've got some agents are contacting us and how do I know what to do? And it's a difficult thing, right, to figure that out. But the right agent, like you said, will be building your career over the long term and not necessarily just going for that quick commission and trying to sort you out with something in the immediate term. So that's brilliant to hear that, mate. How did the collaboration... Sorry, mate, carry on. You go for it.
Yeah, and I would say that's the first talk you have to have with the agent. You know, if you have an agent right now and you say, where am I in 5 years? And they don't have a concrete answer, then what are they doing in the day-to-day to get you there? If they don't have, it's planning. So if they don't have a plan for you, you can't expect them to take you to where you want to go. And if you don't have a plan for you, you can't expect them to magically know. So you have to be on the same page of creating that. That's the first conversation I had with my agent. Where will I be by 2028? And I had this 3 years ago. And we said, okay, this is how we're going to build this out.
Oh, that's incredible, mate. I would love to. I would love to maybe revisit this in 2028, 2029, and go back and see whether the plan, you kind of stuck to the plan and the plan worked. I'm sure there'll be ups and downs throughout that journey, but it's working so far, right? Like it's working so far. How did the collaborations come about, Frederick, after the games? Obviously, some of them were huge, right? And they were so clever, the way you went about that. Did you have the idea first? Did the idea come to you to think about, right, how can I work with an athlete like Noah Lyles, right, the 100-meter Olympic champion? Oh, it's my vault run-up. How do I improve my vault run-up speed? did you have that plan before and then it came about in the Olympic Games and you connected with him while you were there? How does that kind of thing work? I think people would be really interested in that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because every situation is a little different. Like I could talk about Noah Lyles, and then I could talk about speed, and I could talk about other people, but everyone is different. Some you expect and others you don't expect. So Noah, I actually knew him before the Olympics. That came from he was already supporting me. He followed me. He saw my journey, which number one, you have to be out there. You have to be doing things in the world for people to notice you. Once they notice you and they respect you, then it's building the conversation. I messaged him, said, I love what you're doing. And this is after he's commenting on my post, supporting what I'm doing. I said, I love what you're doing. And I'm planning ideas in the future. Like this, I know I'm creating this storyline of me getting to the highest level of gymnast in the world, become number one in the world. How could someone who's number one in track help me on this journey? And I saw it. I said, obviously, I could use speed for vault. So I put that together. And I said, hey, Noah, you want to hop on a call? We start that. And he was, again, for him, he's very supportive of me. He wants me to succeed. So this was like an easy thing for him. And at the Olympics, we hung out because we're all in the village. And so that relationship it's kind of, I would say, the simplest version of like two people really respect each other, and the older brother wants you to succeed. I feel like that's like my relationship with Noah Lyles. And we're on the same path in different sports,
Yeah.
He's trying to build a personal brand and grow his sport as much as possible, and he's ahead of me. And I'm trying to do the same thing in my sport. And Noah used to actually do gymnastics when he was younger. And all of these connect, and it just happens, right? For speed, it's a little different. Of course, I want to collaborate with speed or the top people in the world, but how do you get them to see you first? Because you're not going to just DM people and ask. I didn't ask Speed anything. He DM'd me first. But I made a video when Speed tried to break the backflip record, which is 1,000 backflips in a day, and he got like 600. And then I made a video commenting about it and saying I could help him train to do this better. And then that video gets 4 million views, enough to hit his team, because he can't see everything all the time, but it hit his team. And his team said, you should do this. Then he hits me up. He says, he DMs me out of nowhere. I just see a DM from Speed that says, yo, do you think I could get a double backflip, a standing double backflip? I'm like, I don't know how you can get, like, there's only like 3 people in the world who can get a standing double backflip. This is like probably one of the hardest things to achieve. And I was real with him. I was like, odds are very low. I know you can jump higher, you're very athletic. You'd have to, number one, you'd have to have a lot of balls to go for it because it's scary. But we can see if you're willing to try it. He was like, all right, are you free in 2 days? 2 days. He DM'd me 2 days before. 2 days later, he was in the gym. We shot.
Wow.
So it's funny how fast some things move like that. But I guess the answer is, number one, you have to be out there in the world doing things, and people resonate with what you're doing or like your personality, and they hop on board. And you have to have the feelers out. Again, I have people on my team who will message for me or scout content, scout people, and it all lines up eventually.
That process of creating content that does really well online, Fred, like, what's your involvement now you've got a team? Are you the ideas guy and you're in the gym actually filming it and then it's put out there by your team? Like, what parts of that process are you involved with?
Yeah, I would say I'm like of course, I'm the final decision maker on it. And I would say I'm the North Star / okay, everybody also is going to have more ideas. I'm going to have some ideas, lots of ideas because I'm in it. But I would say I might decide a big decision like, I think going to Africa would be cool. And this hasn't happened yet. And training kids in Africa who don't have resources or whatever. Is it possible? What are the odds? What does it look like? It's a very broad idea. The team is coming up with the strategy of getting there, all the problems that might happen, 20 videos about it. What would be the potential of growth if I actually did this project? How many things can we get from it? How much would it cost? All of that. Then they bring it to me. They basically put the plan together, and you have to build the plan from the earliest stage of testing whether it works or not, which is talking about it, to getting everything on board and how long it's going to take. But I guess the answer is I'm the North Star of like a big idea, or they'll still bring big ideas to me. And then I'm the final say on when they have 50 ideas and we narrow it down to 15 ideas. And then again, after I narrow it down to 15 ideas, they go in depth of the details of each idea. And then I'm, again, looking at the details of every idea and saying, do I like this or not like this? And then it's the same process on the editing side.
Amazing. Following the games, Frederick, you get offered so many things after you become an Olympic medalist, right? And if you've got the right team around you, like it sounds like you have, you're going to get offered even more than the normal athlete. Is there anything that you've done in the last year that you've tried, you've given it a go, and you've gone, actually, that's not for me, I don't want to do more of that in the future? Is there anything that you've done like that in the last year? Because not everything you try is going to be for you, right? Like sometimes you have to try something to know, okay, that's not the path I want to go down.
Yeah, I would say you try a lot of things. And the interesting thing about things is sometimes it doesn't work or it's not what you want to do in the moment. But you sometimes might circle back around to it, which is funny. And I realized this just after a couple of years in this, and I'm not surprised if this thing does circle back. But for example, we tested streaming in the last couple of months, and not too bad, like success rate. We look at people like Speed who comes and does a stream and the success he's gotten from it and said, can I stream? How can an athlete stream while training fully? Things like this. And we test. And then he said, in this moment, it's hard to manage that or try this. So we push it away for now, focus on what is working, and we might revisit it at a different part of the year when I'm not training up to an NCAA, where it's right after a big peak. Maybe I stream and bring on some big names. Or there's a lot of ideas that just don't make it, that people don't see of, I plan to do this big thing, and as we're trying to map it out, we say, it's not going to work the way it is. From a brand deal aspect, I mean, there's a couple deals that might happen, and after you're like, this was a headache, this sucked. And I mean, that tells you whether you want to work with them long-term or not. One of them I had was, I mean, I don't want to give names of brands, but I did this appearance at this fried chicken place after the Olympics. I don't eat fried chicken. I don't eat junk food like that. They pay great, but I like in the moment, I'm like, why am I doing this? Yes, I need to get paid or make profits, but I'm heading in this direction where I want to choose everything that aligns with me and I'm passionate about. And I feel like this is kind of the journey that every person goes on in this industry of finding things they love, realizing what they don't identify with, and building a brand that's true to them in the long term.
I guess that comes back again to thinking long-term and not just short-term, right? Like, and you have to learn that yourself sometimes. You do something. I had a similar situation. I got asked to go and open like a theme park, and they like put me in an outfit and a cap, and I got paid well, and I was like, I feel like a sellout. I'm never doing this again. Like, I don't want to feel like this again. Like, the money might be good, but it's not worth it because I know that I'm just taking it for the money and it doesn't align with. So I think, again, that's great advice for athletes that maybe find themselves all of a sudden in a position where all these opportunities are coming their way. Doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything. And if you do say yes to something and it's a mistake, maybe you've just learned that you don't want to do that again in the future. So that's really good advice for young athletes that might find themselves in a position like you, mate. Hi, are you okay? Is that one of your coaches? Is that one of your coaches?
One of the coaches, yes.
Nice to meet you, sir. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Oh, I judged you when you were a kid, so don't worry about it.
The next thing I want to ask you about, mate, is the uniform. Obviously, it was a big thing. You teased it really well online. Everybody, I think, was excited. And we've not had a lot of change in men's gymnastics for a long time. How did that collaboration come about? And again, was that an idea that you'd had for a couple of years that you were planning to try in the future? Or how did that come about, mate?
Yeah, it was, number one, an idea that I wouldn't even call it an idea, a pain point that I had my whole life. I've hated the way the uniforms look, felt uncomfortable in them. And, that's basically the story I told when I was leading to promotion. And you sit on this always feeling, literally every time I put it on, I'm like, all right, we have to go out in this uniform. Never feeling like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I can't wait to compete and everybody sees me in this uniform. So I always had this problem with it. And everybody on my team knew that, and even my teammates know that, and my teammates, we would talk about it and say, the uniform sucks. In the U.S., in the NCAA, there's been a lot of talk about the uniform, of changing it over the years. Because we don't follow the FIG rules, they said, like, oh, maybe we should do no shirts and compete in the NCAA with no shirts. But there's a whole line of process to get things approved, and people have their disagreements. The older audience says, why would you guys compete with no shirts? Doesn't make sense. And so there's always just been disagreement of a lot of people not liking the uniform, but not knowing what to do about it. And so I basically, after the Olympics, said, this is one of the things I really want to change. It'll be a long process of changing it, but also, why am I in the sport if it's not to do these things, to change the things I don't like about it, or a lot of people talk about and don't like. So that's how the process started. And I worked with a designer to design it. And I designed it based on people's pain points, number one, and there's a lot of them, but also just what would I really love to wear and feel true to me, to my younger self who hated the uniform, what would he love? And that's basically what started the process, and we went with it. And when Turn was asking for me to sign a deal with them, we said, we don't want to do this the normal way. I have this goal of changing the uniform. This is everything that I want to focus on when partnering with you guys. And they said, I guess we understand. We'll support you on this journey, and we'll partner on this. So that's how it came about. But it would never come about if I didn't have this goal. And the Turn deal, I don't even know if there would be a Turn deal without it. But they saw what I'm trying to do, and we're passionate about backing it up. And so it all came to light. And there's been a lot of talk about it.
Yeah, so credit to Turn, because they've, I wouldn't see it as a risk, but maybe from the outside in the gymnastics community, they'd see that as a risk that they're taking to try and change the uniform that's been, it's men's gymnasts. I know that we haven't worn braces for a long time, right? But we're almost wearing braces still, and leotards, and we've been doing that for over 100 years. So it is a massive change, and it was certainly going to be quite divisive within the community of gymnastics as a whole. And I think it's probably, is it the first time that you've faced some criticism back in something that you've done that's maybe been large enough for you to notice it? How do you deal with that criticism, and what have you taken away from it? And what have you learned from that, Frederick? And I will say as well that the overwhelming support has come from the athletes themselves. A lot of the men's gymnasts, right, are super excited about it. I've seen people commenting on the pictures of the uniform and when you brought it out. And for me personally, I feel well, if someone wants to wear that, let them wear it. If someone wants to wear the leotard, let them wear it. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters...
That's options, what I mean?
The only thing that matters to me is, can they do great gymnastics? I remember being at the Tokyo World Championships in 2011 when I was 18. It was my first major championships, right? And we line up one morning for training, and I used to wear, boxer shorts and, gymnastic shorts. And gymnastic shorts are so short that my boxer shorts would stick out of the gymnastic shorts, right? But I felt comfortable in that, and I got lined up, and we all lined up as a team at the World Championships, and the coaches spent 10 minutes basically telling me how it was so disrespectful that I was wearing boxer shorts, and all the other countries are going to look at me as a bad role model. And I was looking at my teammates is this a real conversation? What does it matter what I'm wearing if I do great gymnastics? It's irrelevant. And so, I can see both sides of that argument, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't care what you're wearing. I just want to watch your gymnastics. If you want to be seen, if you want to feel masculine, great. If you want to feel more feminine, great. Just do your own thing, man. I just want to watch your gymnastics. And if it's amazing gymnastics and beautiful gymnastics, brilliant. And it's not the first time someone's done this, right? In 2008, and in the lead up to the Beijing Olympic Games, Paul Hamm and Morgan Hamm made a big comeback. And going into that US Championships and US Olympic trials, they were trying to play with the kit, right? So it's not the first time it happened. Yeah. They were wearing I think it was the Adidas sleeveless compression tops. They wore that with longs, and I used to love that because I would train in that as well. So yeah, I'm just really interested to how did you handle that feedback? What do you think to it? And how was the kit when you wore it? What was it like to compete in?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with feedback. Again, to answer your question, this was the first time that I created a divide where people are very for it or people very against it, which number one is kind of exciting. I mean, I guess it sounds crazy, but it's exciting because it means you're doing something that matters to people, number one. So that's definitely the first. From the feedback, I saw feedback from very many different angles on whether I'm doing it for, like, why am I doing this? Or I've seen feedback on the design aspect of it, like, oh, this should change, this should change. And any feedback on the design element is perfect. That's what the goal was. Talk about it. This is model one. There can always be tweaks. But the point is we're doing something and trying to make it better. So that part, no problems with. The other side of things on whether people take it personally and have these replies to it, I think number one, it was great to see what they say and understand, try to see things from their angle, because it's interesting. You can do things without thinking about what other people are going to, how they're going to respond. I can do it from an honest side of, this is what I would love. But now it shows me how are other people going to take it, right? But I don't take any of that personally because, again, this is about a uniform. If you make it personal, I mean, that's you. But for me, it's not going to hurt my feelings. So it was good to see it and learn. Maybe I should have approached it more this route or this route to not offend people in this industry or this area. But again, it's when you're at such a big level of reach on a project or a thing like this, you can't expect everybody to be happy with it. And you can see so many people so supportive of it that it's hard to, I don't know, my personality specifically, I've never worried much about the hate side of it or a lot of people disagreeing with me. It's kind of like I wasn't doing this for them in the first place. I mean, I hope that doesn't sound bad, but so it's hard for me to be hurt from it.
Yeah.
But I take them into account. I learn from it. I say, maybe I could have done this differently. And all you can do is learn.
Yeah, of course.
So
yeah, and I think you've handled it like a champ, mate. And I think, like, we had a conversation before we went live, right, where we were talking about this. There's this massive, large, silent majority that you never hear from that are normally supporting you or like what you're doing. But, the two extreme ends are very loud, and sometimes online it can sound like, whoa, this is so many people, when in reality it's not. And I'm sure when you went to the Winter Cup, at least people were probably saying to you, I like what you're trying to do, I can see what you're trying to do, you're trying to change things, it's great somebody's trying to do that for men's gymnastics. Maybe this isn't the thing, maybe this isn't the thing that works, but it's great that you're just starting on that journey, because we need people to do that, right? Like, how many times have male gymnasts around the world sat there in a gym with their teammates and gone, why is there nothing out there for us? Like, why does nobody watch the sport? Why is there no money, Yeah.
And the answer is nothing's happening. Things need to happen. We need to do things. We need to try things. We need to experiment. We need to generate talk. And that's going to be a big part of my journey. And I know this is just the beginning. But I'm thankful for everything that's happened so far, and I think I'm surrounded by amazing people that make it easy to be in situations like this. And again, there's so many people supportive of it that I'm just thankful.
What would you change, mate? Is there anything that you would tweak on the uniform if you were going to wear it the next time? Like, how did it feel to actually perform and do routines in a competition?
Yeah, so number one, the perform and feel very comfortable. I mean, I feel good in it. This is similar to what I train in. I'll have a regular t-shirt like this, but you'll wear shorts, or I'll wear shorts and leggings. So that's very similar to how I train in. So I was very comfortable in the competition. For tweaks, we're going to experiment with a couple of different designs and see. This is more based on what other people said, not based on whether I think this is going to be much better. But a couple of notes that people said is, one, the leggings could become, because number one, you don't need leggings, but the leggings could become leg sleeve instead of pants that you put on. And that would just make it easier to change in competition of just put on the sleeve or take off the sleeve, whether you want to protect your legs from skimming on pommels, but you wouldn't have to take off the leggings and put on shorts in order to switch, which we still have a problem with that with the normal uniform of your on pommels pants. You have to take them off, and then you're in your tight unitard, and then you're putting on your shorts quickly before anybody is looking at that part.
Yeah.
So we still have that problem that we could experiment with. Another, opinion is, and I don't know if I support this or not because it's kind of something I was getting away from, which was, why don't you make the actual same unitard design, which has the bottom part that you put your legs through, but in the material that the shirt was. So it's looser, but you still put your legs through it so it can never come out undone.
Right.
That's something to experiment with, but I don't know if I want the feel of still, it's just like pulling up on that area. The shirt doesn't come out in competition. It's long enough that when you tuck it, I would probably say 90, as long as you actually tucked it and weren't half-assed, like putting half the effort into it, you're fine. Unless some random fluke happens, but we could test that too. We'll test a couple different designs, different materials. But I mean, my path or pitch is, I'm going to work on this and we're going to keep designing and iterating until people are satisfied, which means I'm doing something and then it only has one result. The end goal is satisfaction. Meanwhile, nothing has changed on the other side, so you can't expect that to ever get better. So that's where we are with it.
Yeah, keep doing it, man. And the other thing is as well, like you said, the bigger you get, not everybody's going to agree with you, and you don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want everybody to agree with me. I like that. That's why life is great, right? Because people have different opinions. Like even the people that I love the most, we disagree on things. So keep doing what you're doing, mate. And one thing I would say is, there wasn't really, there didn't seem to be an outcry of anger at the German women's team for wearing like a full uniform and completely changing the kit in the way that I've seen that backlash online for you. So I think just keep doing what you're doing. And, I'm sure that your agent and your manager and your team, when there was that divisive stuff online, were going like this, oh, this is great, right? Because, people in that line of work are like, there's no such thing as a bad story or bad press. Like, it's great. And it got people talking, which was awesome, right? It's that conversation, that narrative. And I'm sure your name kind of blew up within sports circles, certainly gymnastics circles around that time. But yeah, I'm completely behind you, man. You keep doing what you're doing. And like I said, I kind of believe in equal opportunity, but not necessarily equal outcome. Like, you get in what you put in, and everybody should be able to compete, like perform in what they want. I don't care what you wear. I'm just interested in whether you can do great gymnastics or not. Like, that's what's important to me. So keep doing that, mate. I'm supporting you in what you're trying to do. I want to finish off, mate, and it's been a great conversation, just with getting specific on some gymnastics. So it's a brand new code of points. What are the things that you're excited about? Maybe what apparatus has been the most challenging to adapt to the new rules and the new code? And what are you enjoying the most about these new rules?
Yeah, I like it for sure. I think this is definitely raising the level of difficulty. I mean, you only have 8 skills now, and now you can push and handle it. You can also handle more training because the routines are shorter. So with these two things, I'm definitely excited. I think the difficulty is going like this in the whole world. And you can see it now. Everybody's experimenting. I think everybody's being smart about it, of change a couple things first, handle it, and then we load more. I mean, that's my strategy. It's been a couple months of getting in shape and getting back. And I decided right now I've changed about 1 skill on every event to adapt to the new code. Most of them are upgrading dismounts because those are rewarded. I think that's great for me personally. I've always been pretty good with the dismounts or the explosive side, so I'll use that to my advantage. Let's see. I think this code, if I was going to give a guess, like an estimate of what I think the best all-arounder will score in the world by Worlds, I think it's going to be around 86. I think the average start value for the top, not average, the top 5 guys, their start values will be approaching near 94. I would say 94, whether that's this Worlds or the next, and people are going to go above 94. I can see routines that I've made that very doable, and they start approaching 94 or past 94. So I think that'll be kind of the range. I think the sweet spot in start value is looking around a 15.6. And then if you're excelling and you want to be in an all-around final, you're pushing the 16.0 limit on whatever event you're on. So these are things I'm considering now and planning for, and started with just one new skill on each event, clean it up, master it, get in shape again, and then we start pushing even more for Worlds.
And you already, like, it sounds to me like you already have a strategy in terms of the gymnastics side. We spoke a lot about the other side of things, but, you're talking about numbers there. You're clearly looking at the whole world, the best guys in the world, and putting that plan together and preparing, like we talked about, the business side and the brand side. But also with the actual gymnastic sides, it sounds like, you've looked at this new code with your coaching team and you're like, okay, where do I want to be in LA? How do I get there? What's the best way to get there? And I think that this new code suits somebody like you so well. If you're a gymnast that's got very good spatial awareness, it is built for you because it's big gymnastics and dismounts. So hopefully it makes the sport incredibly exciting. Is that what you've done, Frederick? Have you looked at it and strategized already? Do you have your almost a gymnastics plan of what routines you've got in mind for the next few years?
Yeah, I definitely do. I definitely have the routines for the next couple of years. I think there'll definitely be changes as we see trends happen and things get rewarded in our sport. I think this is a code for two people. Like you said, number one, the people with the air awareness or the power that can handle big things. And then the second thing is this code is for the all-rounders. It shortens the gap on every event. That can be great for an all-rounder sneaking into a final and executing really high. For example, rings, you have the dismount that can save you 2 strength elements. And that's when the all-rounder comes closer to the rings guy. Or same with the pommel horse guy. The all-rounder had 8 great pommel horse skills, but not 10. And now it shrinks, and now they're on the same footing. And it's a code where, they want diversity of elements. You can't just be a Russian guy on pommel horse or just flares. You need all of it. You need the strong dismount. You need everything now. I think that also helps me because I've always been an all-rounder. I have a good range of abilities on every event for every type of skill, and we're leaning into that and making sure capitalize on everything. The front uprise elements on parallel bars, the under bar. Basically, not just lean into your strengths, make sure the foundation is wide as possible this year. That way we can have the right routines stack up each year.
Have you looked at the code in the next 4 years, Frederick, and thought, okay, the path of least resistance for me on vault is a handspring 2.5, and is that why you're training the handspring 1.5 in college? Then you did the double like 2 weekends ago. Is that the plan, handspring 2.5 on vault?
Yeah, so that's the plan for the first vault. And again, it's on potential. We've seen this vault scores the highest in execution on average than any other vault. So we're going to choose that path. And when you have so much time, you have 3 or 4 years to get this vault. Well, of course I want it before then, but realistically, as long as I have it before then, I'm set in the all around. We're going to choose the vault with the most potential for execution, because I think I'll be able to get that eventually. So that's the route we went.
What do you think Team USA and yourself have to do in between now and LA 2028 to go from the 3rd best team in the world to the best team in the world? Is that your goal? Is that what you want for your team? And what do you have to do? How do you close that gap on the Chinese and the Japanese, and potentially, depending on where the world's at in 4 years' time, maybe also the Russian team, right, will be back into the mix?
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's always good to plan that the Russian team is back. And if they're not, that's unfortunate for them, but that's whatever. But we plan for it. So again, we're gonna have to bridge that gap if we want it. And we want it. I mean, this is in LA, this is in the US. Bronze isn't accepted anymore going to LA, it's gold. Again, we still had a big difficulty gap between China, and this has to be bridged before the execution side. I think we're always gunning for execution, but you realize internationally, they do reward difficulty. Truth be told, they reward difficulty more than execution. You can see it it's very easy to score, not very easy, but you'll see it a lot. No one really gets 9-0 execution, no matter what routine they're getting, no matter what routine they're doing, unless you're using one on P bars. But a lot of guys get 8-5 execution, whether they're doing the 16-3 star value or the 15-7, it all kind of trickles down to the same area of execution. So it's in these early years, building the difficulty as much as possible. And I think that's the push that our country just started 4 years ago. And that's kind of why my generation, me and Asher, came up with the right difficulty. But they're still pushing it now, and we're still pushing it. And so we're going to make that difficulty jump in the next 2 years and then have time to sharpen it, but be on the same level of difficulty.
What about yourself individually, Frederick? I'm sure having got to know you a little bit through these conversations that we've had, you've got plans of trying to win an individual gold medal. What do you need to do in between now and LA 2028 to put yourself in a position where you can fight for an all-around gold medal at the Olympic Games?
Yeah. My coaches tell me this all the time. I would say the most important thing I have to do is stay healthy. I think 4 years of a consistency is the most powerful thing I could ever do for setting myself up for this. I mean, that's the thing we factor into everything is stay healthy. As long as I can train every single day consistently, there's no doubt I'll be where I want in 4 years. So that's the most important thing. And the difficulty is always building slowly. The execution is building. And that's just from working gymnastics. I've talked to Simone a lot, and she doesn't even realize it sometimes, but she hasn't gotten injured in 10 years. I mean, how strongly can you progress if you train for 10 years without injury? That's the difference between going like this over time or you go like this and it doesn't come up to the end. So I think the health is the key for now. Everything else is working. We have the right plans for each event of how to progress. But I needed years of consistency to make this gap. And so that's what I'm gunning for.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned in the last 12 months, Frederick? Since we had our first conversation, what's the biggest thing you think you've learned maybe about yourself or just about life in general in the last 12 months?
I guess I would say clarity is key. I would say most of your time should be put into, well, not most of your time, but there's no point in really doing much without clarity on what you're doing. So you plan very far out. You plan years out. You plan for everything, and you work backwards from there and have complete clarity on exactly what the steps are to get there. And then you execute on the steps. But most people are great at executing on the steps, just don't know the steps. Might not have the knowledge, which is also part of clarity of studying and learning what you need to learn to achieve things in any end. So the answer is always clarity to everything.
I'm going to be a bit selfish and ask for some advice, Frederick, because I've always had this dream of maybe being the first British athlete to catch a Brett Schneider. What two pieces of advice would you give a very retired gymnast who sometimes swings around the bar once every couple of weeks, but also needs shoulder surgery? Would you say don't do it, or would you say, oh no, if you take your time, these are the two technical pieces of advice I would give you to try and learn that skill?
Yeah, you could I think you definitely could get that. Catch it once easily.
Okay.
To get it very, very consistent.
I just want to do it once, mate. Just one time for the camera. Sam will be filming. That's it. I just want to be the first British guy to catch it. That would be pretty cool.
My best advice would be first, give yourself like 6 months. Don't try to do it in like 1 month.
Okay.
Which means, I don't know what shape you're in right now, but I never do more than 3 of a skill in a day. So that's an interesting thing. I'm the type, and I've talked to a lot of athletes about this. Some athletes will do 10, 15 of a skill, then they'll take a day off and then do it again. I'd rather do 3 every single day and then 5 to 6 days a week, 3, and then 3 months later, you have the skill and no pains, then load really hard one day. After 6 or 7, your progress is going like this and you're just taxing your body. So I would say, number 1, train like 3 a day for like 4 months straight. There's no way it would take you 4 months to catch it if you did 3 a day.
What about if you can't train every day because you're retired and you've got to work and you have a little boy? So maybe at a push you could get in the gym twice a week, or at least once a week. Would you just spread out that time horizon?
Yeah, you might need to spread it out, but you might be surprised. I would say then you could stretch your numbers to 5. So you don't need to do 10 a week. 10 a week is a lot for getting one skill over a period of time. You don't need too much more. The technical side of it, I've realized it feels most similar to a Coleman to me compared to a Kovacs or Casino. Some people do like a Kovacs. You start the flip first, you double twist and try to catch it. I train it more kind of like a Coleman. You do the quarter, then you wrap and you open to finish off another quarter catching the bar.
Okay.
if you kind of know what I'm saying.
Yeah. So
With
in
the
your head,
twist.
when you do the twist, Frederick, when you start, do you almost feel like you're going half and then into a 1.5 and opening out kind of, or is it almost like a blind catch? Like you saying you're kind of trying to see everything the whole way around?
Yeah. So I started off and it was like Kovacs technique. You go back first, you double twist, and you're just looking for the bar. When you don't even really see, you're just reaching and hoping you catch it. Then it turned more into I do a little quarter. So I wouldn't say half fruity, I'd say quarter to see the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're wrapping, but you're doing a little less than 1.5 because you want to open and start turning on as you catch. And that just takes numbers to find that air awareness. But I mean, the skill is air awareness. But I also don't swing. I swing it as powerfully as my Coleman. So
really?
You know how people.
Wow.
Exactly. So that's another technique. People usually try to go faster on their casino, which I would agree with, that can help you. On this skill, you don't need more height. So you don't have to go fast or generate a lot of power. I do the same tap as a Coleman, and then I just use the right timing.
Was there any preps or anything you did, mate? Like, so was there anything you were doing on, like, would you practice on trampoline or anything like that? Or was it just on the bar work, just 3 times a day, just get a feel for it and just do the skill?
Yeah, I would say the tramp board didn't feel the same as the real skill. You know, sometimes you try to drill, but the drill doesn't really feel the same. So I didn't really do it as much. It's all on the high bar.
Sweet. Amazing, mate. Thank you very much. To finish off, just what's next for you? What are your plans for the rest of this year? Obviously, you've hit the ground running straight away with the new uniform and the Winter Cup. You've got NCAAs coming up. There's going to be a World Championships at the end of the year. What are your plans moving forward, mate?
Yeah, so next 2 months is locking in for the NCAAs in college, trying to bring home that national championship for our team. So that's the 2 months. Then I'm going to be going internationally, and I guess I would call it a training tour. So I'll be training with the top guys in the world in different countries. We're working on setting that up. I definitely want to go to China. My coach is Chinese, and learn from them. They still are, I believe, the best team in the world. So that's one team I definitely want to learn from. But we'll make definitely different stops, probably about a week each place, and learn whatever I can from each of these places. And then we'll come back. Some other projects on the media side that we're working on and seeing if it's possible. Well, again, you're balancing it with your actual training schedule. I need to get better. I need to grow. How do we fit these other collaborations, these projects in throughout? And I can't really reveal until it's all set and will happen. But so that stuff will happen. And then it's getting in really strong shape for the World Championships, the U.S. Championships, which qualifies for the World Championships. But it's an individual one this year, and I want the individual titles on a couple events and all around. So I'll be putting a lot of work in for that.
Amazing, mate. Well, thank you very much for giving us your time. And if you want to come to the UK on your world tour, you just let me know and we'll sort that out. And maybe we'll get you to Lilleshall, maybe to the National Centre. You can train there. It's a great gym. But keep doing what you're doing, mate. It's brilliant. I think anybody that's trying to promote the sport and lift it, and hopefully we do that through the podcast as well, right? By sharing athlete stories. The more people that can do that, it just grows the pie for everybody else, and that hopefully trickles down to all the other athletes. But I think you're a legend, mate. Congratulations again for your success at the Olympic Games, and I can't wait to follow your progress. And I will keep you up to date with my Brett Schneider progress. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll get a chance to train it together one day. That'd be awesome. But thank you, mate. You take care. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, too.